Hello, everybody.
Hello. Welcome to fab50 Tune-Up number 3. We are so excited to have you. As you can tell, Miss Andrika is live and I'm rolling. As you can see, fab50, look at Lennox over there. Lennox, keep your eyes on the road.
She looks so thrilled that you just put her on camera.
I know. Okay, she does. I'm probably going to get in trouble about that. But all of fab50, when we were in New Orleans, remember I told you, Katie, we were in New Orleans at Summit. We had an awesome time at Coconut Beach. And so thanks to all the ambassadors, they're actually the cause of this, like telling her that she has to hurry up and get her license. So thanks to the ambassadors. That's why Miss Hendrick is doing this right now. So I am so excited to introduce all of our ambassadors and parents and coaches to my new friend, Katie O'Rourke, in California. And actually, if you were at our JNC, you probably already met Katie and her husband, but if not, you will definitely get to meet her this year. And we're so excited, but super excited to introduce you to her. So Katie, I'm going to give them the pleasure to turn the floor over to you to let them hear all about your background and what they're going to get to hear all from you tonight.
Perfect. Thank you, Miss Andrika. And you better hold on tight in there. She's making all the faces. Hi guys, I am in SoCal. I'm in Huntington Beach, California. So you'll see me at the Huntington tournaments. We were there at the last JNCs. I had a little 3-month-old strapped to me. If you saw me there, you probably saw my husband, Patrick Moore, because he was there the whole time. And then we were there again in January if you flew out for that tournament at the beginning of the year for the fab50 tryouts. Out here, my husband and I are both PTs. We run our own business called The Healthy Athlete, PT and Performance Training. We both got our doctorates at USC. Fight on, friends, for all my football people. And I played volleyball when I grew up, so we got back into the volleyball world as quickly as possible after PT school. I played indoor. There was not beach when I went to college. Sad day. But it came around and turned into an NCAA sport right after I graduated, so I couldn't wait to learn beach volleyball moving to Southern California. So I started beach when I was 18, when I was 21, after college, and I've been playing ever since. It is so much fun. You can't beat being outside, getting the exercise, and playing with your partner. We work with a bunch of players, both guys and girls, all the way from, I think our youngest is about 8 years old right now. And we work all the way through the pro players that play overseas, and then the American pro players. We work mostly with the boys because they come back and play around here. They all play up in Long Beach, is where they were playing all their games last year. Tonight I'm going to talk to you about how to stay healthy so that you can keep playing injury and pain free, hopefully, and impress all those scouts so you guys can keep playing as long as you want to. One of the nice things about beach volleyball versus indoor volleyball is that it is a lot less stressful on your joints in most ways because you get the softness of the sand versus a hard gym floor. That being said, there are some other injuries from being on the beach that more people get than indoor. And there are some that just, for being a girl, lucky us, that we are just more predisposed to have, meaning because we're a girl, our bodies are just built a little differently, and it makes it so we're more likely to have some injuries if we don't strength train, stretch, and do exercises, warm up correctly. All those things can help us to not have some of those injuries. Now, I tore my ACL in state finals of my senior year of high school, so I am very much... unfortunately, I know PT very well. I did not have surgery on it. I rehabbed it fully because I had a starting spot as a freshman in college, and I wanted to be able to play. If I had the surgery, I would have had to sit my entire freshman season and redshirt. That is not a common thing, so most of the time we will recommend surgery. But just know that I understand how mentally and physically challenging recovering from and having an injury is. It does not stop me from doing anything today, so that's one nice thing. I'm going to focus on 3 main body regions since we only have an hour, and it's the most common injury areas or joints in the body for volleyball. So I'm going to separate them by shoulder, knee, and then low back, because the girls have a very high incidence of low back pain. Lucky us. And we'll have questions at the end, but also after each section as well. So I'm going to tell you some of the common injuries that we have in those regions. And then I have videos that you will have access to afterwards as well. I know they're recording this too, but that you will have access to by region. So I have shoulder, knee, and back separated. So you can use some of them based on what you're feeling, or to warm up, or to even prevent the injury from happening in the first place. So any questions so far? I'm watching the I guess I can't see the comments there. I need to watch it on YouTube. Haley's watching the chat if we have questions, so we'll make sure we answer them by joint. So I'm going to start with the shoulder, because that's where go ahead.
We do, Katie. I actually received a personal text in our group chat. So they actually want to personally know, because we have had some ACL tears, about what did your recovery look like as far as with your ACL tear going, for those not wanting to go the surgery route. Can you tell them what that looks like?
Yes. So when you have an ACL tear, it's going to depend on if it's a full thickness tear, meaning the entire ligament has been torn, or if you have a partial ACL tear. It's going to depend on how well your other structures in the knee are able to stabilize, meaning your muscles, your meniscus, the bony structure or anatomy, because everybody's is slightly different. It's going to depend how high level you want to get back to. Obviously, in my case, I wanted to get back to pretty high level. When you don't have surgery, it's called being a coper, which is very unlikely. So if you search coper versus non-coper, you'll see that, I want to say, if I have to pull the percentage off the top of my head, I want to say like 95% of people get surgery for ACL tears to fix it so they can go back to the sport, being a high-level athlete. So it is very uncommon to go the non-surgical route. The surgery now is so much nicer than it was when I was 18. So doing the math, 13 years ago, the surgery is so different. They go in super small arthroscopically, so super small holes. The recovery time is less. The trauma to the actual joint when they go in is less. But as a PT, how I determine it, if it's only the ACL and no other structure has been injured in your knee, which is also a very rare case, but if it's only the ACL and everything else can heal on its own, you didn't tear your MCL, your PCL, your LCL, so the other 3 ligaments on the knee, all the directions, and you don't have a meniscus tear that requires surgery, because not all of them do. So I tore my ACL and had a very small meniscus tear, which could heal on its own based on its location and the size and type. So that was a big part of mine. If you need surgery to fix the meniscus, you might as well get the ACL fixed while they're in there, because it will prevent you from moving your knee if the meniscus is torn in a certain way. For me, it took 6 to 8 months I did PT and lifting 5 days a week. I was in the gym for an hour to 2 hours every day once the swelling came down. And I worked way harder than I would have had I gotten the surgery, and just rehabbed that way. So it's a longer process if you want to do it without surgery, if you take the amount of time you put into it. Now, you have to wait longer after surgery to be able to do some of the things that I was doing quicker, if
Okay.
that makes sense. So mine was a timeline thing. Usually with an ACL, return to sport, like competitive season, we say is around 12 months. So tearing it in November, December at states and wanting to play in August, I wasn't going to hit that time frame. Nobody was going to clear me to play at all. Usually if you're a coper, you have to wear a brace at least until you can get your whole body retrained, so that you have the neuromuscular connection, meaning the nerves are telling the right muscles to turn on at the right time so that your joint stays in the position you want it in. So if I had to wear a brace my freshman year, my coach, the doctor, everybody told me that wasn't negotiable. But after my first year, I did not wear a brace sophomore, junior, or senior year, and I don't wear one now. But it required me to keep the strength in my knee muscles, my leg muscles, very, very, very high. So I cannot miss lifting, or I will feel some of it if I go through it. So after having Kenzie, my little girl, I did have to work harder to get back into it because I had to back off on how heavy I was lifting right after having a baby. So I did start to feel it a little bit then, but now it's back to normal. I don't feel it at all anymore. As soon as I got the strength and I got cleared to Olympic lift again, I was fine.
Awesome.
Does that sort of answer the question?
Yes, because actually it was a second question and you nailed it. Good job.
So if you do the ACL surgery, you want to make sure you have a PT that is using the proper testing for return to sport to reduce your risk of re-tearing that leg or tearing the other leg. So one of the highest incidences, or one of the biggest predicting factors on if you're going to tear your ACL, is if you've already torn it before. And that's for either leg. So if I tear my right ACL and I have surgery on it, my risk of tearing either side significantly increases. So you want to make sure you're doing everything in your power to strengthen where you need the strength based on being a girl, which I'll explain when we get to the knee more too. But make sure you have the strength where you need it so that your muscles are what's controlling the knee, and that ligament never has to do any work because it really is a last resort. It's teeny, you guys, if you've ever gone on YouTube and looked at anything, but it's teeny ligament and it's the last resort to stop the bones from sliding in a certain direction, and your muscles should be doing that work for you.
Yes. Okay. And if y'all have any questions for Katie, please put them in the chat box in the YouTube link, or feel free in the comment section.
Perfect.
Okay.
Maybe we'll go this way instead. Since we started on knee, it doesn't matter because the videos are split. We'll start with the knee and we'll work our way to shoulder and back. So knee, you can tear any of the 4 ligaments. The ACL is the one you're going to hear the most, and MCL is your second, which is the inside of the knee ligament. So you can tear or strain any of your ligaments. You can have a meniscus tear, which I'm sure if you know anybody who plays a sport, you've probably heard somebody that's had one. Those are like the little kind of jelly-filled donuts that go between the 2 bones that make up your knee. And what happens is that if it gets stuck somewhere and the bone squishes it too much, it can cause it to tear or flap a little. And that will just cause you to not be able to move the joint how you want. Because we're still in the growing phase, there's something called Osgood-Schlatter's disease. And that just means that your bones are growing faster than your muscles can keep up with. It presents as knee pain right below your kneecap on the patellar tendon. And there's usually a big bump right where that muscle inserts. So it's more common in boys than girls. But a lot of girl athletes still get it, especially volleyball players, because we use our quad muscles on the front so much. And that is the muscle that's pulling where it inserts on the bone to raise that bone a little bit. So that just causes knee pain usually, and we do stretching for that. You can have tendinopathies, meaning you can have pain in the tendons of the muscle. That's the part that connects your muscles to your bones, and it's super common. Often you'll see it right below the kneecap or right above the kneecap in anybody that jumps. So that's a big one. You'll also, this is a buzzword, you've also probably heard of patellofemoral pain syndrome. That's what a lot of people will say is a diagnosis when they can't figure out where the pain is coming from, or if it's a generalized knee pain. And that often can be fixed with strength training and making sure that that kneecap glides through the grooves correctly. And then you can have bursitis. You have a lot of bursa, which is literally a sac filled with liquid to help the muscles and tendons move correctly around that joint, because there are so many. So if you have a little friction, it can cause it to be painful for you. So let's pull up. Let me go. I'm in shoulder. So let's go back here to knee. And we'll share that screen. Pause. All right. So I have some exercises to help reduce the chances of having a knee injury and also to help reduce pain. And while they play, let's make sure. Okay, perfect. It is up there. While they play, we are going to make this big. I'll explain some of them. So this one you guys have probably seen before. You can put the band right above your knees or at your ankles. At your ankles will be the more difficult version of this. You want to make sure that you are not letting your knees collapse inward. So see how I'm pressing out on the band and my knees stay in a straight line? So all of these I use for warm-ups on the day of with a medium challenge band. And then on the days you're not playing, you want to use this for warm-up when you're lifting, or you want to put a heavier band on and really feel the burn in your side of your hips, so your butt muscles, your glute medius muscle, so that you improve the stability at your hips and take the pressure off of your leg muscles from doing that. So this is a big one for ACL rehab and prevention. As girls, we have wider hips, most of us, than we do the boys. So our bones come down and our knees automatically essentially cave inward or touch. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's very normal, but it's a difference between us and a guy's body. So that just means the angles of the muscles require more strength in certain planes. And one of those is in your hips to pull that knee outward a bit. So you reduce the risk of tearing that ACL. So sticking with the band, I often leave it on for squatting. Now, whether I'm barbell squatting, kettlebell squatting, dumbbell squatting, body weight squatting, it's a really good cue to make sure that you're using your glutes to stabilize while you use your quad muscles to power through that lift. So it means that you're going to get both and reduce the risk of your knees touching as you stand and squat. So if you've ever seen someone squat too much weight and you see their knees cave in and touch each other, that's what we're trying to avoid, is that position. These ones are called fire hydrants. Again, we're training that hip muscle. I do these for warm-ups before a game with a light band, or I'll do them to really get that glute burn. These ones are for hip flexors. Most people do not strength train their hips, or one of the quad muscles goes all the way above your hip and below your knee. That's the muscle we're really working on there. And it's important to do your hip flexors since there are very few other exercises that will do that other than hip flexion or like a 4-way hip machine if you have an awesome gym. I know most of them don't have them. We have one in our gym, but it's a machine where you can change the angle and you can push out with your hip. You can cross over and pull in with your hip. You can do a hip flexor flex and you can kick back. But having that hip flexor strong helps to when you're jumping. So it'll take some of that pressure off of your knees when you're jumping. So this is an RDL. I just have it stagger stanced. So there's mixed beliefs on this one, you guys. You can do them single leg. You can do them double leg. You can do them like this. There's reasons for all of them, and I actually prefer if you do a little of each. Single leg works on your stability and will never be as heavy loaded as double leg or the stagger stance because you won't be able to control it no matter how strong you are. Double leg will always be your heaviest lift with this. You can do it with a kettlebell, barbell. You can do it with a trap bar. Any of those will work with us. Dumbbells. And then the one where your stagger stance takes away some of that balance requirement so you can do single leg but still get the benefit if your legs are different strengths. So we use that stagger stance a ton during ACL or knee surgery rehab. All right. Curtsy lunges are a big one for getting your glutes engaged while you are still using your quad muscle. So the biggest thing is we want both of them to work at the same time when you are jumping and landing because we want them to do different things. We want your glutes to stabilize and we want your quads to be your power movers. Now, when you don't have stability at your hips, your quads also try to help stabilize. And that's when you often get injuries or you get tired more quickly. You'll notice your jump is not as high at the end of a tournament as when you started because they're working so hard. This is when you sometimes get cramping as well during tournaments. And then I always tell people that you should be jumping during your workouts. You want to still limit it because you're jumping so much during your practices. But the goal is to do lateral jumping and single leg jumping. Lateral jumping and single leg jumping during your oh, is it replaying again? There we go. During your workouts, because what happens is we do so many things with two legs and our body can cheat or compensate, meaning if my right leg is weaker and my left leg is stronger, I can still lift the 100 pounds, but my left leg might be lifting 70 pounds and my right leg might be lifting 30 pounds. But I won't know that unless I try and do one leg with the weight. So a lot of times I'll have athletes where they didn't know their strength was different because they can still do all the workouts and all the weights that their coach wants them to do. But then I have them come in and I want them to do everything single leg so I can compare it percentage-wise because that's how we predict injury. If you have a certain, you usually want 90% side to side. That's how we return to sport after ACL rehab too. So my left leg and my right leg should have no bigger difference than 10% in strength. And the reason there is a 10% difference is because everybody has a dominant side. And this becomes especially important when we're doing our upper body. So the arm you swing with versus the arm you don't, your arm you swing with should be a lot stronger than the one you don't because you use it all day. And that is where we see more of that difference. But 10%, so they should be 90% strength of the other leg. Not only side to side, But if I test your quad muscle on the front of your thigh and I test your hamstring on the back of your thigh, I want those two to be within 90%. Because if one's so much stronger than the other, that brings us increased risk for other injuries as well. So side to side and what we call antagonist muscles, or muscles that work against each other, should also be that way. Do we have any knee questions? I don't see any in there.
I don't see.
It's probably our most common injury in all of volleyball for girls, because the rate of ACL tear is way higher in girls than boys. For what we call a non-contact, meaning volleyball, you're rarely going to have contact, especially on the beach. But in soccer, if you see someone do it, someone steps on someone's foot or they hit someone's knee, that's called a contact ACL. There's nothing necessarily in your body that's making it more likely for you to tear. It's the environment that did it. In volleyball, it's you landed on one leg from an approach. It shouldn't necessarily buckle, but it did. Why? And those are the things. In girls, it's just more common because of the angle between the hip and the knee, increasing what's required, the physics. It literally comes down to physics, but increasing the angle of pull and the required force to keep our leg in the position we want. So we'll work our way up. We'll do back next. Back is a really... if we talk about not necessarily injury, but if we talk about the pain that we get asked the most about in volleyball, I would say it's low back pain, even over knee pain, because how much we swing in volleyball and how much extension is required for our swing. There are very few sports that extend or bend back as much as volleyball does. So back injuries, we usually have, most of the time, it's just what we call a facet dysfunction. It means the joints aren't gliding how they should in your back, and we have to figure out why, whether that's between your rib cage where you're hunched a little far forward, or if it's from being so far back and extended from when you're playing. We find where it's moving too much and where it's not moving enough, because we want the whole thing to move a little bit at each so that you don't have pain. Another one, if you've ever had like numbness or tingling or weakness in either leg, it's called a radiculopathy. It means that the nerve got aggravated at the spinal level and you're feeling those symptoms in your legs. That's a pretty common one. If you land funny, dive funny, like a lot of force, you guys. I'm talking a lot of force, and you had to have something to predispose you to have it. It's not like, oh, I'm going to go dive for a volleyball and it's going to happen. But if you ever feel that one is actually relatively easy if you see a PT to get fixed pretty quickly. If you don't let it linger, like right when it starts. We just have generalized low back pain where your muscles are too tight, or you have pain just from overuse. And then we have something called this is a fun word, you guys, called the spondylolisthesis. Say that 10 times fast. Girls are more predisposed to that as well, because in general, girls are more mobile than boys. What that essentially means is you have hinged so much at your low back here that now one of your joints has just slid forward a little bit on the one in front of it, and it's sitting in a position that's going to cause you pain and close down the space where the nerves can run through. It's a really common injury for volleyball, water polo, and gymnastics, especially in girls and especially adolescent girls, because we're growing so quickly. Our core strength doesn't often keep up with our growth. And that's where you end up with the issues going into the excessive ranges without that control. So for back, if you guys have questions, think about it while we go over some of the core exercises. Now I know every coach's favorite exercise to make players do, especially when you maybe didn't play as well as you want, is how long can you hold a plank? So here are some other choices that we like a little better. Let's go back. We want back. All right, so this is a really good one. Oops, let's make that full screen and make sure it's back on there. Perfect. The cat camel, or apparently depending on where you live, cat cow. I found out it's geographical. So if you have back pain when you play, this is a really good warm-up, is to do the cat camel before you play, and then after when you finish. This one's called thread the needle, and this is working on the rotation in your spine where your rib cage is. It's called your thoracic spine, but it's essentially working on the rotation that's required for you to hit at the top of your arm swing, you guys. So this will come into effect more with shoulder injuries too. But getting that thoracic spine to rotate gives you that full cocking phase for swinging. This is called an open book. It is also working on thoracic rotation. The one thing I want to note is, see how my hand is not touching the ground when I fully open? That's because my spine is a little restricted from carrying a little one. But you don't want to just touch your hand if you feel it coming from your shoulder. So when you open, I can touch the ground if I then reach and only feel it at my shoulder. But when I feel my rotation finish, that's when I come back closed. And you want to do those both directions, even though you're only swinging with one arm. It's really important to try. You'll always go farther on the way you open to swing. So if you're right-handed, you'll always go farther twisting with your right shoulder back. If you're left-handed, you'll always go farther with your left shoulder back. All right, planks. I'm a big fan of side planks or regular planks with an alternate activity. So doing it like a commando like this, where you have to go up and down, or I think I put shoulder, those are probably in shoulder. Shoulder taps, things that require movement, because in no position in volleyball are you static while using your core. So the more you can move while you use your abs, your glutes, your low back muscles, the more it will translate into sport. So those ones, here, I'm going to go back a teeny bit. Those were just called bird dogs. And we love these guys. Post for back and core. So you can do them on both sides. You can make them easier or harder. If you want to make them easier, the easiest version is just with your arms. The hardest version is with your arms and your legs. And the middle difficulty is with just your legs. And if you want to make it really extra hard, you do the same arm, same leg. So right arm, right leg. And that will be your hardest you can make it without adding weight or stability on the other side. All right, dead bugs should be every athlete's first ab exercise that they do every single workout. You can make it harder by putting weight on your legs or your arms. You can pass a ball between so you can press it. You can put a band on your leg and your arm so you stretch them. Your goal is to keep your back on the ground and your core tight while you're doing that. You don't want it to arch up. Then we're going to do bridges. So when I say core, you guys, core for a PT means your abdominal muscles, all 4 sets of them. That means your glutes or your butt muscles, your pelvic floor, and your low back muscles, so your back extensors. So most people only train their abs, and at that, they only train their rectus abdominis, or your six-pack muscle. And you want to make sure that you are training your deep abdominal muscles, if anything, in addition to your glutes and back, so that it can keep you stable while you move your arms and your legs in your sport. Here's another one. It's called a Pallof press. You can do this with a resistance band or a cable column. You can hold it and step out. You can hold it and stay out there, or you can hold it and press out like the first video showed. All of them will work it in a different way. And then rotational cable pulls. We rotate a lot in volleyball. So loading rotation in exercise is important. A lot of trainers used to not do that often. So they would have people get injuries when they were swinging or rotating because they didn't practice it in anything other than play. So that's a huge thing as a PT that I try and untrain from my clients, is that rotating while loaded is not a bad thing. You need to do it in a controlled manner. You need to make sure the weight is appropriate, but you do want to load it with weight so that you can get it strong through the full range, so that when you've swung 100 times that day, your core can still handle that volume and still do it correctly without compensating. So that's a big one for back. So my main things to not have back pain: to make sure you have the rotation in your thoracic spine. Make sure that you have good glute strength, which we went over a bunch of the glute exercises for the knee because they also help with that. And then make sure you're training your deep abdominal muscles. So your internal and external obliques and your transversus abdominis. So some of those where you're holding it more and trying to stay in a position while also moving will help you with that. Do we have any back questions? I don't see any. Hold on, I'm flipping.
Yes.
Nope, we're all good.
Don't see any back yet.
No worries. You guys I'm giving you so much information. So if you have questions after too, I'm sure Miss Andrika will tell me. We can work on that. So the last one is shoulder. And I'm going to preface this. Almost every volleyball player at some point in their career will have a labral tear. I want you to hear that. You will probably have one. That does not mean you will know you have it. So if I did an MRI on all of you, I would guarantee that probably half of you already have one. But here's the thing. It only matters if it restricts your motion or gives you pain. And not all labral tears need surgery. But just the volume that we use our arm, it's pretty unlikely that we don't have it. Now, I have never had shoulder pain. I'm one of the few. My teammates, I had 3 of them have labral surgery while I was in college. So I know what it looks like. And it's not a fun rehab, you guys. I'm telling you now. So make sure you take care of your arm. I'd much rather do the ACL rehab 100 times over than a shoulder rehab, personally. So labral tear is super common in boys and girls in all overhead sports. The labrum, for those of you that don't know, is like your meniscus, but it's in your shoulder. So it is what helps to make the joint sit in the socket better and have better stability. So it's almost like a cup that holds it in and gives it cushion. Rotator cuff tears or sprains, or strains are pretty common. You may not even know you have it. It might just present as shoulder pain. Biceps pain, or your big muscle in the front that comes right up the shoulder. You usually have pain right in the front of your shoulder. That one's a pretty common one. And then the biggest one that people notice the biggest change from, it's called shoulder impingement. And what that often means is that when you lift your arm up, my ceiling's slanted. When you lift your arm up, it doesn't go all the way up. So you can only get it to here before it feels like it's stuck or it hurts. And that is because your shoulder blade is not moving how we want it to on your back, and it has a little hook on it. So what happens is when you lift this arm up, the hook should, I need to do it this way. The hook should tilt up this way so that my arm can go all the way up. And when it stays down in the back, it's just going to press everything on top of it. So it's called shoulder impingement. People often notice the biggest result from it because you'll be reaching much higher without pain, and you'll be hitting at the top of your range of motion. So you'll be getting higher over the net and have more power to bring it down. So that is one of the most common ones we get referrals for, because it's a super quick fix for the most part if you know what you're looking for. Ways to not end up with that or not need us are on this video. You're going to want to work on range of motion. So there are certain muscles in volleyball players that are always tight. And one thing is that we have that adaptation. So when we're a volleyball player, our arm goes way farther this way than it does this way. So we have to work on stretching the muscles that make the arm go that way. Because anybody that doesn't play a sport goes 90 degrees and they can get all the way here without compensating straight down. But in volleyball, we go way farther into external rotation or back so we can swing. So we have to make sure that we don't let the other ones get too tight, or our shoulder blade won't move how we want it. All right, Haley, we've got this one. Next, we're doing shoulder.
What about, Katie, I just got a question to me. What about rotator cuff? What do you see? What are your thoughts on, or rotator tears? Like with what would you say to sometimes the girls are thinking, they're hearing that. Are you seeing a lot of that in beach volleyball, or?
We don't see a ton of it, thankfully. We do train a lot on bands for exercises. So one of the things we get often, it's more from the boys than the girls, is that they're boring the bands for the rotator cuff. Your rotator cuff muscles, there are 4, are very small in comparison to your other muscles. They're also not power muscles. They're postural or stability positional muscles, meaning you're never going to load them heavy. They'll work in conjunction with a muscle like your deltoid, the ones you can see in your shoulder, to move it. But they're not going to be the ones that if you went and grabbed 25 pounds and lifted it above your head, they're not lifting that 25 pounds. They're going to keep your shoulder in the right position, and the other muscles are going to move it above your head so that they're taking the weight. So rotator cuff exercises might seem more boring, but they, in my opinion, are even more important than the big Olympic lifts or the shoulder presses where you're trying to hit a PR or anything like that. Even though it's going to seem like you're doing less work, I did them every day from the time I was in 7th grade. I did a band series every single day for my shoulder, and I would beg to guess that that's probably why I didn't have shoulder pain, because I worked so hard on the teeny muscles while also Olympic lifting. So I still snatched, hang clean, all the things where you're trying to do shoulder stuff. I still shoulder pressed really heavy. So I did all the fun exercises where I felt like I was doing a lot. But then I also did the ones where you just have to know you're preventing yourself from being hurt versus it feeling fun to move. Like I did 40 pounds last week. Now I can do 50 pounds this week. You're not going to get a huge change with the bands. Because you're never going to get them crazy heavy because they're so small.
Okay.
But rotator cuffs, we don't see them as much in the younger players, more in the older players. We see impingement way more in the younger high school, grade school, junior high players, just because of posture, because of development, and not having the right bra sometimes is a big one for that, actually.
Okay.
For impingement, if you have the right, since this is all girls, if you have the right sports bra to help support, it allows you to not stay so hunched forward. So if you want like the cute stringy bikini, sometimes that's not gonna, or the cute, like all the different strings coming back down, if that doesn't hold it correctly, you're gonna feel that pressure in your upper traps and you're gonna feel yourself forward versus being able to stand up straight and use that whole range of motion. So this is actually probably one of the best images. So if I hunch forward, even though I have nothing wrong with my shoulder, and I reach up, that's as far as I can go, no matter what I do, because it stops moving. If I stand up straight and I lift up, that's as far as I can go. So some of your shoulder extension comes from your thoracic spine being able to extend and stand up straight. So that is why we do some of those. But that posture and that position are also what's going to reduce the risk of rotator cuff tears, because the tears come when you repeatedly do a motion at their age. When you repeatedly do a motion in a position that's bad, where you're causing friction on those, that's where you're going to get your rotator cuff tear from.
Okay.
That, or if you snatch incorrectly way too heavy. We do see those. So if you are Olympic lifting, make sure your coach or whoever it is watching and your form is good before you load it. Because you can load it. I did lift heavy snatch, but you have to have good form before you do it. Because if you do anything overhead super heavy and do it wrong, you can risk that. So like a jerk will also do that. That answer it, maybe?
Yes.
All right, so this is called a, oh, let's go back. Crossbody stretch. So the reason we put this on here, it might seem like a super simple exercise, but the reason we put this one on here is because I'm going to guess not many of you know that you need to block your shoulder blade for this exercise to be done correctly. So if I just do this not standing on a wall, I can pull my shoulder way farther across my body, but I'm not stretching the muscle I'm trying to get. So I lean into the wall or the post on the net so that my shoulder blade can't go any farther than that wall that's blocking it. And then I pull across, and you'll feel a lot stronger pull down the back bottom side of your shoulder if you do it that way. And I hold stretches anywhere from 10 seconds to 30 seconds. It's whatever feels good for you. The research on it, there's benefits to the 10 for 10 seconds. There's benefits to the 3 for 30. There's benefits to all of it before or after. Depends what feels good for you. The pec stretch with overpressure. So I am actually grabbing under my pec muscle. I'm putting pressure before I lean forward to get that stretch on the front. And that is what, as a PT, we do a ton for people. But to be able to do that for yourself before a tournament will give you so much more range when you're swinging. And it will reduce the forward position of your shoulder. So this one that I'm about to press play on is going to be for your lat muscles. So you'll feel the pain on the bottom back side of your shoulder because it goes all the way down to your low back is where it inserts. So if you find a surface, your backpack, anything will do, you're going to grab really hard right on the underside of your shoulder blade. You'll feel the muscle mass, and then you're going to try and stretch and lean your butt back into your heels. And then you'll come back up and you'll move it and grip a little bit different and go back. And that will also take a ton of shoulder pain away usually. these are the bands I was talking about. So external rotation is a huge one for the rotator cuff, you guys. You can do this as a warm-up. Internal rotation. This one is about making sure that your elbow stays in line with your shoulder and you're pulling all the way back and then rotating up. It's the closest thing to mimicking an actual swing. And then this is going to help you with the deceleration of your arm swing so that you don't stress that rotator cuff on the follow through. Then we're going to do T's standing. So this is the series I would do myself every day. Then we're working on Y's, and this is for blocking. So keeping your shoulder blades down while you are able to lift resistance up. And then you're going to do cross body. And this, we call this a D2 pattern. Essentially, you're training your nerves and your muscles to do the pattern you want. You're creating that pattern of movement while doing it like your swing. This is for rotator cuff as well. You can do X's, crosses, ABCs, clockwise, counterclockwise, you name it, you do it. Elbow straight, shoulder locked, and you're putting a little pressure in the ball and moving it, and that is going to help that rotator cuff. You'll feel the burn with this. Everyone always looks at us funny when we say that. I promise this will make your muscles burn almost as much as lifting super heavy, and you'll try and figure out why. Then I do this where I push in with a little more pressure and hold, and then I release. You're going to do like 5-second holds. This is, again, rotator cuff. Shoulder taps. So this is the type of plank I like. It works on scapular stability, arm strength, and core stability all in one. All right, let's pause this. Do we have any shoulder questions? Or Miss Andrika have any questions for me?
No, not on shoulder.
Do we have any questions on other body regions that I didn't touch on? I touched on the ones we see the most commonly on the beach.
What about ankle?
So ankle we don't see from beach players as much.
Okay.
We see it a ton indoor and grass tournaments. I think we take more ankles and do more ankle sprain assessments in those than any other injury, actually. At the ankle, the important part when you have an ankle sprain is that you, even if you think it's little, that you make sure that you get the full range of motion back and the proprioception. And that means proprioception is just that it knows where it is in space. So essentially it means that your body gets the full connection back to that ankle so that it can tell that you landed on the outside of it or you landed on the inside of it when you're landing. So it corrects and turns on the muscles you want. What we do see a lot on the beach from your players, actually at JNCs, is pain in other regions like the knee, hip, and back from a previous ankle sprain that was not rehabbed because they didn't think it was bad enough. I think we had like 5 of them at JNCs last year come over, and that was the story we got with them. What happens is your body starts to compensate when you don't think it's a bad ankle sprain. If you didn't get the full range back, and you start to just little tweaks. You can still do everything fine, but you'll start to land a little differently, or you'll start to use this muscle a little more, and then you end up with pain and a compensation somewhere. And it might not be, you yourself may not be able to feel it. If I watched you on tape before your ankle injury or ankle sprain and after, I could probably see it and tell you exactly what you're doing. But that's what often happens. And the most common is ankle injury, and then we have a knee injury or a low back. Hip is less so. But the exercises I gave you for the knee rehab and the low back core stuff are what we usually do for ankle. I know that sounds funny, but the way that you take pressure off the ankle is having stability in the glutes or the hip so that your ankle muscles don't spend the whole time doing this. because that's not what they're supposed to be for. They're supposed to move it and help you jump. So they're supposed to push off really hard and help you jump and do a little bit of stabilizing when you come down incorrectly or on the inside or outside. But they're not supposed to be doing all the balancing. So if you ever do like the one-legged balance and you're doing all of this all over when you're trying to do an exercise, it means you probably need to work on two things. You need to work on your hip strength, specifically anything that's sideways moving, or your it's called your abductors for any parents that want to look it up. But you want to work on your hip strength, because if your hips are stable, then your knees and ankles are going to be able to move in the ranges they need and only do the function they're meant to do, which is to push us. Ankles are to push us forward for walking, jumping, running, and knees are only really supposed to go bend and straight. They're not supposed to twist or do any of that, just based on how the joint is built. So having that hip joint move in all those directions, that's why you want that stable, and then the ankles will work. And then you want to work on your proprioception, which means balance, single leg, eyes closed, eyes open, doing something else. So like a dual task, we usually make our athletes stand on one leg and pepper with us. We will add something unstable under it after that. After an ankle injury, if my player cannot stand on a Bosu ball on one leg and either set back to me or pass back to me, then they're not cleared from me being fully cleared ankle rehab back to playing. That doesn't mean I have them sitting out. It just means that I don't think they're done with their rehab to where they won't compensate.
Okay. So we're gonna just take one to two questions if you have time. Is that fine?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
For traveling or at home? Whoever asked that question.
Let's do both. Something they should have in their backpack and then something at home if parents are like, let me invest in something.
So my favorite tool to tell every volleyball player to have is some version of a massage gun.
Okay.
They make really inexpensive ones now, so that's why we actually recommend them now. They make really inexpensive ones versus a couple years ago. There's no rhyme or reason as to which one's better. Find the one that fits your budget and that has the tools you want. I like the little travel ones. There are ones where you can get them all different sizes and all different heads to switch. I like the travel one. It's easy. It goes in my bag. I always keep a band, a resistance band in my bag. I personally like the rubber ones because I can tie them and untie them and do them for shoulder, hip, knee, all of it. But you can get an actual loop like the one I did in the videos. It's more of like a cloth loop. And then a cord. Some people carry the cords that hook around the volleyball net really nicely. Or hotel doors. They come with a little piece on Amazon. I know has them too. They come with the piece that you literally throw on top of the door and the side of the door. And then it gives you the handles to do the exercises. Those are my two biggest ones for injury prevention and recovery. And then some version, not allowed to give nutritional advice, but as a PT, staying hydrated and having some version of an electrolyte is extremely helpful for cramping, recovery, and performance.
Okay.
So whatever that means to you guys.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. Let's take one. Perfect.
Absolutely. So if you have a program written for strength training, you should have the heaviest training about a month after you finish your true competition season, which is hard now because all of us play all year. Even when I was there, I played all year. So whatever you consider to be your true peak season or competition season, or when the scouts come, that's when you're going to be lifting the lightest weights. It's your maintenance period. You'll lift the fewest times per week and you'll lift the lightest of all your weights. Then you will lift, or I recommend that you lift quite heavy. I think heavy lifting should be in all girls, especially programs, about a month after that peak season is over. So you give yourself a little recovery time and ramp up after the season's over. and then you're going to lift heavy. And then about a month before you go back into your peak season, you'll start to taper it back down to make sure that you are not exhausted from lifting that heavy, aka your muscles aren't. Most of you have endless energy. But yes, it should absolutely be different.
Okay. Well, thank you. Oops, look there. Nope, put it back. That's great.
For any outdoor sport, the nutrition and rehydration are the biggest ones we recommend, because we see way more cramping that could be more easily prevented by proper nutrition before the tournament, while you're playing, and recovery afterwards. So things that are high in potassium. Well, you've got a chef here. She can tell us all the fun things, but things that are going to replenish your muscles, and that you're eating enough calories and enough water and electrolytes will help that. I massage gun after every day when I have multiple tournaments, stretching at night, but I'm talking gentle stretching, guys. We're not trying to go to yoga and increase our range of motion a million between Friday and Saturday of a tournament. We're just trying to lightly stretch them back out from use for the day. If you like ice baths or icing, that's fine. There's research to show both sides of it, so it's really what feels good for your body in that way. But warming up is the biggest thing, especially going into day 2 and day 3 of a tournament. Making sure your body is appropriately warmed up before you play, and you've activated the muscles that you need to be working so that you are using them once you start playing.
I like what you said about ice bath. So would you say cryotherapy or ice bath? Like, are you a fan of one over the other, or not really?
There's in the research, there's really not one better than the other. I actually personally I don't love them. I did them all through college because it was required, and I didn't see a detriment to them.
Okay.
I'm a cold person, so I don't like being cold. I actually use it's an expensive piece of equipment, but I use the Nordic legs. So I put the compression on between tournament days if I'm playing multiple in a row, and I find that for my body works better. My husband said he doesn't notice a difference. So again, it's totally, my biggest recommendation is try it. None of them are going to make you worse. So if you like heat better, you can heat at the end if it relaxes you. None of them are going to make it worse unless you've just had an injury and there's actual swelling from an ankle sprain or something. Then if you put heat on it, it's going to blow up. Right. But otherwise, if you want to ice, you can ice. If you have a cool cryotherapy machine, go for it. If you have an ice plunge, have fun. You can sugar for me. If you like a hot shower or a hot tub at the end, my only caveat with hot tub is if you hop in that hot tub, you better drink a lot more of something, because you have just burned a lot of that liquid and electrolytes out in that 10 minutes.
Right.
You sat in there, or if you stay in longer, you need even more than that. But other than that, there's no right answer. It's what feels good for you. I test it, and if you like it and play well the next day, maybe kind of backlog that and put that down. I tried this, and this in between it, and it worked better. If you don't play as well the next day, maybe try something different that night and see if you feel better in the morning the following day.
Okay. Well, thank you. I knew at our very first conversation that this was going to be so valuable to our fab50 community. I mean, my phone was blowing up. So thank you so much. I know there's something big coming at JNC that will be announced with you being there. So I cannot wait. And I know my daughter is going to be the first one in line to see you. So thank you, Katie. I'm so excited, and I cannot wait to see you in just a few months. So
yes, we'll see you guys in June. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. And I'll see you in our back chat. Thank you. Thank you for all being on.